Wow. Hello, hello, hello. How's it going? Happy Sunday. Woo, child. Woo, child. Things are gonna get easier. Something like that, right? It's hee hee hee. Hey, Ika. Hey, KJ. Hey, Samaj. Hey, bestie. Yes. Good morning, good afternoon, good later afternoon, wherever you are. I feel like I sat down too soon. I need to grab one more thing. One more thing. My handy dandy iPad. Just in case I need to pull some charts for some inspiration. I'm having a wonderful morning so far. I woke up around 7 a.m. like I usually do. 7 a.m., 7:30 or so. Went to the gym, which I don't usually do before these lives, so I am hyped up. I had a good workout and having some iced coffee as well from my local coffee. Well, it's not a local coffee shop, but it's a cute little franchise called Paris Baguette. I'm drinking an iced decaf, heavy on the decaf, I hope. Iced decaf, just iced coffee decaf with white chocolate and lavender. And oat milk with a little splasher of half and half for the creaminess. And it's so good. I also had a a bacon, egg, and cheese croissant sandwich that had a little bit of Dijon mustard on it. Yo, that motherfucker slapped. So I am happy. I managed to take a shower. That's why I was running a little bit late. And had to eat my little breakfast sandwich without rushing myself because I didn't want to rush the digestion, you know. Yeah, boy. So I had that. They're running a few promotions over the next 2 weeks. Well, I guess the next week. So I got, if you got a breakfast sandwich, you got a free iced coffee with add-ins. So that's what I did. I like me a little deal. And yeah, feeling good this morning. How are you guys? It's good to see you. I miss y'all during the week. I love my job. I love my coworkers, but I do miss y'all and I miss talking to y'all. Holding on by a thread. My toddler's been up talking since 5:23. Hey, shout out to Jupiter and Gemini. Okay, welcome. That bitch came in and said, everybody, open your mouth, say words. And it's been a lot of speaking, a lot of endless conversations. But I'm here for it. Hey, Eric. Lavender sounds so good. Yes, lavender white chocolate. And you know, I do like Paris Baguette in general, but their coffee is very strong, even the decaf. So sometimes I have to be cool off them. Most of the time, decaf coffee is still too strong for your boy. But I did have Dutch Brothers white chocolate lavender latte, and it was exquisite. Exquisite. I like lavender. Lavender is good in coffee. It's also good to smoke if you like to smoke. A little lavender, a little mullein, however you say it, and rose. Ooh, and what's the other one? Chamomile. I think you can smoke chamomile, but smoking lavender is just so floral and delicious. And rose in a smoking blend is good, but rose in chai, like in a chai latte, fantastic. So add a little floral notes to your beverages. It will change your life. Mm-mm-mm-mm-mm. Yes, it is so soothing. It's just delicious. Like, you know how sometimes you can smoke and feel pretty? Like, I like a joint of just like herbal smoking blends that have a lot of floral notes in a nice little organic paper wrap, like a hemp wrap. It's a girl blunt. You know what I mean? I only smoke girl blunts. So, yes, rose in the chai is a holy matrimony. It's fantastic. I almost don't want to drink it any other way, especially like a loose leaf blend. There is this company, I can't remember what it's called, but they have a rose chai blend that you can make yourself. Add a little ginger in there. Fantastic. Yes, a girl blunt. Yeah, exactly. You know, you gonna catch up whenever I say it, but it's a girl blunt. I love a girl blunt. Love a girl blunt. Not big on the tobacco, but I do love a girl blunt. With a hemp wrap. Yes, sir. Okay. So, what's going on in the sky currently? Let me just tell y'all where everybody at. So, currently we have the sun in Taurus. Actually, right now, if you are in Central America, Cancer is rising with Mars there. So there's that. We also have the moon is in Capricorn, so we're coming off. Oh, we're coming up on a moon Mars opposition, which does not bode well for me having caffeine today. It's probably going to hurt later. That's fine. Um, we have the nodes as of this morning finally in Leo and Aquarius. So the north node Rahu is in Aquarius, and the south node is in Leo K2. Uh, Saturn is in Pisces, as you all know. We'll be hanging out there for a long time. Venus is still in Pisces. Girl, she been there since February. Tired of it. Time to move on. Do something else. And Mars as well. Mars can go somewhere else. Homie been there since sometime last fall. It's time to talk about something else. Even though that means it's going to be my Mars return in Leo. I'm always on the fence about that because it'd be too much sometimes, but maybe different now that Saturn has moved on. Who knows? Mercury is still in Aries until the end of this week. I believe on the 23rd, Mars will be in Taurus. Mercury will move on to Taurus and join the Sun, who is also now in Taurus. Excuse me. And then Jupiter is in Gemini. So we got some shifts and changes happening, but slowly, which is nice. I feel like the first quarter of this year was a lot of just a lot happening at once, a lot of shifts, a lot of changes, and a lot of new stories being introduced. And then the last month or so has been slower change. So I like that we've had these weeks where not a whole lot of planets are doing a bunch of different things all at once. It's been pretty chill. So we have a nice Mars Venus trine applying throughout this week. And then, like I said, Mercury moving into Taurus. And that's about it. Just keep eyes on the moon as it's moving around as well. But it has been an interesting time. I'm curious how y'all feel about Jupiter and Gemini. It's been, what, 5 days now? 4 or 5 days of that transit. And we also got the sun in Taurus at the same time. Sun moving into Taurus is interesting because it is the first time the sun has been there, bringing our awareness to our Taurus house and Taurus themes since Jupiter entered Taurus last year. So, I would imagine that this is giving some clarity and some awareness and consciousness to whatever Jupiter has been doing. So any new establishments, any new established or reorganized narratives and stories about your Taurus house and how you relate to that. Very, very curious how that's been for you guys. How has it been for me? I guess for me, Taurus being my 12th house, but Taurus also being the rising sign with Venus there in my T-boy chart. I think the way that I relate to my gender and presentation has changed a lot over the last year. Mostly, hi Jim. Mostly in the way that especially now that I work in person and with people closer to my age, or at least people who are more like peers to me, it's interesting. I won't say it's weird, but it is interesting being a man, being perceived as a man. I have a new friend at work who now she's not working with us anymore because she just graduated from the community college, but she's like 20 years old, Gemini sun, Scorpio rising. But it's funny because she forgets all the time that I'm trans. And so she'll make jokes about like men and the way men are and direct them towards me, and it's like kind of funny to 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 be perceived that way, and then to also like chime in on women's issues at times from the experiences that I've had, and she'll literally forget and be like, "Wait, how do you know?" And then like, "Oh, right." So it's like nice to be seen that way. And then at the same time, like whenever it comes to maybe pursuing relationships, like I've been dabbling on some dating apps, but for women, like seeking women instead, and feeling very like still not sure how to pursue relationships with women in general, whether they're queer or straight or whatever the case is. Like I am a whole different person, a different being, so it's weird for me. I was telling Samaj this morning about how our um, team bonding outing at work on Friday. We didn't have to go into the office, but instead we got to go to a farm. We got to volunteer at a farm, which was really, really fun. I deeply enjoyed that. My farming ancestors and my uncle who recently passed, who has a farm in Texas, had a farm in Texas. I could feel how this is something that we'd done for a really long time. So I felt very at home. We harvested garlic. I did a lot of the digging. Well, it wasn't digging, but you like have one of the forks. You like put it into the ground to loosen up the soil so that everybody else can pull the garlic pieces out. And that was really nice. I really enjoyed it. But there was a girl who worked on the farm, and she was absolutely gorgeous, black girl on the farm. And I was like, oh, she's really cute. I'm scared to talk to her, so I'm not going to, because I don't, knowing that I'm perceived as a male, I don't want to like be weird, she's working. So I was like, I'm just gonna be normal. Um and be normal and focus on the task at hand. But then afterwards, the farm posted a picture of us out there, and thanks like the volunteers, us, for coming out. And I was able to see her Instagram, and then Samaje was asking me like, oh, so you're gonna like slide in them DMs and shoot your shot? And I was like, no, I'm not gonna do that, for a number of reasons. One being that her chart is very similar to my last two exes, but extremely similar to my ex before Emilia, like because they were only born 4 days apart in the same year. So different moon signs, different rising signs, I'm sure, but everything else is the same. And I was like, I could feel that in the brief interaction that I had with her. And as much as I am attracted to that still, I feel like, aside from things like, COVID caution and everything else that are my current hangups with socializing in general, um, I was just like, I don't even know what I would do because I don't want to be perceived in a particular way. So, dealing with a lot of that. And I still have Jupiter and Taurus over the next year in my solar return. So, themes around rejection still linger, and alienation and all of those other things. I'm just kind of like, eek. I don't know. I'm just going to not do anything. So, I'm going to talk about that more in therapy. How do I find out the folks' charts so fast? She had a birthday post from a year ago, and I just took a look. Sometimes I look, sometimes I don't. But that one, I was like, I need to just take a little peek, because the some about girls born in September for me. I'm pretty sure my last three, maybe four. I think my last three exes all have September birthdays. So my type, born in September. So, um, anyway, yeah. So all of that to say, the fixed time themes, yeah, itchy. But now we're shifting into these mutable sign themes, especially with Jupiter and Gemini now. So shifting focus there. Let me see what y'all said in the chat. Maybe I wish I smoke and turn into that. So right. Hey Priya, good to see you. Hey Lo, hey L. Do you prefer L or Lo now? Let me know. Yes, hi Jim. Samaje says Jupiter and Taurus helped me see how the pieces of myself fit in the whole of my relationships, especially with family, waging my role and obligations against my boundaries with who I won't be for them. I like that. I like that a lot, actually. That's a really good way to frame that. I do think, yeah, renegotiating or recontextualizing your role and relationships and how you can fit beyond just what you do for other people and beyond just the way that you show up for other people. I think that's good Taurus advice. That's exactly where I've been, deep in contemplation, but with certain friends. I like that. I like that. I feel like my support and compassion for their situations is enabling certain things that I actually don't stand for. More on that soon. That is something I wanted to address today, so I'm glad that you brought that up. Samaje said, try to get you back on them drugs. Listen, so many drugs. And her moon sign in particular, if that really is her moon sign, Sag moon, while I'm in a Sag perfection, I don't know. I don't know. Yeah. Um Yeah, Samaje just hit that right on the damn nail. Yes. Glad Jupiter and Taurus is gone. It helps me reclaim a lot of my anger and boundaries as well. Oh, feeling like I'm entering a new dimension of life with Jupiter and Gemini and want to leave social media. I really feel like that too a lot. I am uninterested in a lot of what's happening on social media. It's like the noise of social media got even louder with Jupiter and Gemini, and I just need it to just lower your voice. Hey Desiree, very fitting to drop in exactly at themes of rejection. The shame and the rejection of Jupiter and Taurus. Like, if there's any other Leo people in the chat who don't have who don't have any Taurus in their chart, like I feel like if you do have Leo and Taurus in your chart, I feel for you. I have a lot of compassion for you now that I didn't quite understand before, but after that transit, I'm like, I will happily keep my chart and my problems and not other people's problems. The devil that you know. I have not enjoyed being aware of shame and the things that I've internalized and the fears of rejection. I would like to not be aware of that, but alas, I've been changed. So now I have to think about it more often than I would like to. But it's good for me. Definitely helpful in progressing progress in therapy. You need to be banned from the September baddies. I really do. I can't help myself, but I'm like, girl. And it don't matter. September, when I say September baddies, I mean both the Leo sun and the Virgo sun. Like, because it's both of them. Both of them, child. I also need to be banned from Venus and Cancer. Like, girl, stay away from me. Stay away from me. I'm trying to figure out if I'm having a birthday party or if I just want to mind my business as usual. The relationship changes out of the solar return have exhausted me a bit. Ooh, yeah, your birthday is coming up soon, huh? Happy early birthday to you. Low is great or L. Okay, perfect. Just want to make sure. I want to leave socials too. Strong desire to distance from it. Yes. Yeah. And I definitely am distancing myself from it. I kind of just have it there occasionally, but it just doesn't hit the same. I have Taurus rising with Leo Mercury. Eek! Yeah, girl. It's the way, like, I never really understood the ways that Taurus has the upper hand on Leo, but now I see it and it's too much. It's really the way that your appearance really does have so much influence over how much power you have in society or in a particular situation, and how the way that people perceive you really is going to determine a role or an expectation that other people have of you. It's like very difficult to escape. And if you don't measure up to those standards, like, I think if anything, that transit has really made me have to One, because it's opposite my Jupiter, it's made me really have to develop my own standards and my own expectations, really for myself, so that I don't fall into trying to measure up to somebody else's expectations of me. Because it's very easy for Taurus to want to be liked by other people more than um, centering how they feel about other people. You know, it's like, I really want them to like me. And it's like, okay, but girl, do you even like them? And I know I'm not the first person to say this, but it's like really obvious to me now how easy it is to like fall into this kind of subservient position where you really do prioritize other people's like opinions of you a lot more than your opinion of them or your opinion of yourself. So when you have like a firm set of values or boundaries or expectations that you like determine for yourself, shout out to Saturn and Aquarius, then it's a lot easier to not get roped into that whole wanting to please, wanting to be received, wanting to be accepted thing. So I do think for me, being in a Jupiter perfection now, specifically a Sag perfection, while Jupiter is in my first house, is like me having to double down on that, especially if I expect to date or get back out there in any capacity, because I will stop myself from engaging with people because I'm worried about being rejected or alienated in some kind of a way. And I don't need to do all that. I need to have my own hard lines and my own like metrics or standards or whatever, so that I can seek that in other people. And if they don't have it, you know, I'm also allowed to reject people. It doesn't always have to be me on the receiving end of rejection, you know. That's the kind of Scorpio narrative that I have for myself, is automatically assuming once they get to know me at a certain point, they're not going to like me. When a lot of times, like if we get to a point where you see something in me that you don't like and you're like, I don't think this is going to work for me, that's protection, you know, like that's protection, because it's going to put either me or you in a position where we are compromising ourselves a little too much. Like compromises in a relationship are cool and good when both people agree to those compromises. But if you're having to like self abandon in order to stay in a relationship, you just probably don't need to be in that relationship. Let that man go, let that girl go, move on, go somewhere where you can actually be yourself and not have to like change fundamental parts of you, you know. Changing behaviors and stuff to like be a better partner and all that is one thing, or to know and learn your partner is one thing. But if there's just like some fundamental aspect of you that the other person doesn't like, or that some fundamental aspect of them that you don't like let that be the truth. Take it at face value and say, oh, you know what, this could be cool, but I just don't think this is sustainable for me relationally. So that's something I'm trying to practice as well. Especially with Jupiter and Gemini, and like learning a little bit more about my own values and um my own ideas of what a sustainable functional partnership looks like. So those are my thoughts. Those are my thoughts. Man, the rejection and shame was immense. Goodbye to Jupiter and Taurus. Feeling so strange about relationships now too. Yes. Definitely strange. Baby, that's why I stay ready to fight. Listen. I need to grab some water. I feel the caffeine is giving me an ick. So give me 1 second. 1 second. Oh, not the severe weather. Anxiety. Keep on trying me. Anxiety. Keep on trying me. Somebody's watching me. It's my anxiety, yeah. Okay. Um, Yes. So, sorry for the gum chewing sounds in the mic, especially while it's all juicy. Unless you like that, I have to self soothe. Heavy on my own self expectations and not prioritizing other folks' opinions. The Taurus drag. Hee hee. Ironically, wearing a mask helped me erode those people pleasing things. It's tough as hell. Yeah, that should be beating my ass real bad. Being the only person masking in most settings. Hey, Slum. Um, no worries. We're just chatting right now. What was that? We're just chatting right now. Or other people project that subservience onto you because of their value system. Also true. Also true. Letting go of wanting to control the response. Also true. Also true, especially depending on where your Venus placement is. You got Venus in a cardinal sign. Heavy on the this. Sometimes you just got to let people not like you. You know what I mean? Sometimes you just got to let people not like you. Okay. What else? What else? What else? All right. What did I want to talk about? I wanted to talk about. I had kind of a heady conversation in mind, so I'm gonna just go with it and see where it takes us. But I have thoughts about. Well, let me frame the conversation first. So, I was listening to the Conspirituality podcast, one of my faves, and they did an episode about AI. It was called AI Gurus, and I'm trying to find it so I can show y'all. These one AI Gurus. I know this is backwards, but and about 30 minutes in, if you decide to listen to it, they start talking about, well, I think the whole episode, I forget what the first 30 minutes was about, but the whole episode in general and like the context of the podcast is that um they talk about ways that conspiracies and spirituality kind of go together, and like the impacts of spirituality on um people's relationship with like fascism and the alt-right and all this other stuff, right? So it's very good. If you haven't read the book, read their book. Great book. But this episode they were talking about just a bunch of different ways that AI, and specifically I think they're called LLMs, language learning models, like ChatGPT and stuff like that. The influence that it has on people in spiritual spaces, but just in general, like the impact it has on our relationship to information, and I guess in some ways how it can make us susceptible to manipulation by authority figures or something like that. So the section that I listened to, they were talking about this section I listened to, they were talking about like how, what were they talking about? I kind of forgot. I don't remember what they were talking about, but what it made me, oh no, I remember what they were talking about. They were talking about how people have been using chat gpt and some of these language learning models in place of like therapists, or in place of spiritual guidance, in place of astrologers, things like that. And so what I thought was interesting about what they were talking about, specifically these language learning models, like that straight up made me think about Jupiter and Gemini, and Jupiter and Gemini being the ruler of Saturn and Pisces. So I want to talk through that, and also how that factors in the nodes now being in Leo and Aquarius, especially since Saturn and Pisces kind of rules over the North Node in Aquarius, and then the Sun moving around, influencing the South Node in Leo. I don't know exactly what I'm trying to say, so I need to talk through it. So, whatever I say today is probably not my final thoughts on the situation, but just kind of brainstorming and throwing some stuff out there. So, feel free to talk back to me on this. We can soundboard. So, I got a coworker that stays trying to get me to use ChatGPT, and no shade, they power go out a lot. Stop. Okay. So let's start with this idea of um ChatGPT as a therapist or replacing therapists and coaches, because I feel like this will set up a larger thing that's happening if my brain can do the thing and route us there. So when you're in therapy with a person, there's a lot happening beyond just you talking to the therapist and the therapist responding to you. You know, like the conversational element of therapy is really just a means to an end, which is more of the subtle, um, more intuitive relational things that are happening below the surface. Because it's not just about the conversation at face value, right? It's about the relationship that you're developing and the trust that you're developing with the therapist. And that has to happen slowly over time and through multiple displays of you being vulnerable with that therapist. And one aspect of psychotherapy specifically, so this more kind of free association conversation type therapy that happens if you've had like an astrotherapy session with me, that's kind of more of like a psychotherapy type um, relationship, is where the client is sharing, whatever things that they're going through, and the therapist kind of becomes a projection of whatever caregiver or whatever um relationship dynamic that you as the client are trying to subconsciously overcome. So for example, and this process is called transference. So you can look up transference and countertransference if you want to understand this a little bit more. I'll do my best to explain it. Or as a matter of fact, let me just look it up so I can give you all the definition, because context matters for where I'm trying to go with this. Yes, Sloan got it. Transference. Okay. So transference is a psychological phenomenon where a person unconsciously redirects feelings, desires, or expectations onto another person. In therapy, it refers to a client projecting their feelings about someone else onto the therapist. The feelings can be positive or negative and can offer valuable insights into the client's relational patterns and unresolved issues. So, as a therapist, and I think I've explained this before with coaching in the kind of way that I was taught to do relationship coaching, is when you're listening to a client speak as the coach or the therapist, you're not just listening again to the words that they say. You're listening for different patterns. You're listening for the way that they tell the story to you and like the details that they do or don't omit. It's like you're kind of being, is it fair to say that you're being Jupiter? I guess you're being Jupiter and the other person is Mercury. You are listening, you're listening to a lot of the things that they don't say. And you're also observing their responses to you as you're actively listening to them. So for example, let's say you're telling me a story about your let's say you're telling me a story about your partner and how they're getting on your nerves. Y'all got into some kind of fight and you feel like your partner doesn't understand you. And so when you're telling me the story, you're going to say something like, yeah, me and my girlfriend got into it because she gets mad um that I don't clean up in the house as often as she does. Like I leave, I'm less likely to care about how much stuff is left all over the house, but she's constantly nagging me about leaving things everywhere and how she wants the house to be clean a certain way. And I just feel like, I'm coming home from work, I'm tired, like I don't have the energy to constantly clean. Like sometimes I just want to come home and chill out, and then she's just in my ear constantly. And it makes me feel like she doesn't appreciate the fact that I work so hard and yada yada yada. You're just going on and on and on. So when I'm listening to you tell this story, I'm listening to how you position yourself in this dynamic to say, like, are you positioning yourself as someone who is are you feeling defensive? Are you feeling like you have to really justify your actions? Or are you being overly charitable and understanding of the other person? Are you making it out to seem like maybe how they feel and the demands that they have are more important than how you feel and the demands that you have? Or are you framing it as though she needs to be more understanding of you and you just feel so misunderstood, and so on and so forth, right? So I'm listening to how you talk about yourself or talk about the other person in this dynamic. And there are things that I'll hear that maybe you won't realize that you're saying. And my job as the coach, the therapist, whatever, is to make you aware of that. The tricky thing that happens is once I make you aware of that, that's going to potentially trigger some of your psychological defenses, because I'm holding up a mirror and I'm saying, like, hey, this you? And a lot of times, this is where the Leo and the Aquarius of it all comes in, is a lot of times whenever I hold up that mirror and I say, hey, so is this you? Because this is what I'm hearing. This is what it sounds like to me. A lot of times, especially if it's a sensitive subject or a way that I'm kind of challenging you to see yourself in a way that maybe you don't want to see yourself, that's that whole Aquarius thing of, no, I'm not like that. That's not what I'm doing. Because the way that you see yourself in your own mind on the Leo side, you have an image or an idea or a narrative, a version of yourself in your own head that you think you're projecting out into the world. But in reality, that may not be what the other person is seeing, especially the other person in whatever dynamic, whatever relational dynamic that you're in. And so whenever I hold up that mirror and I say, hey, is this you? What happens unconsciously and very quickly is likely some kind of like really, really young inner child caregiver type dynamic or wounded version of you is going to come up and say, like, hold on, because this is always what happens. Somebody always is perceiving this thing in me, and that's not what I'm trying to do. And I just feel like nobody ever listens to me and nobody ever sees my side of things, and da 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 da. Or on the other side, it's you saying, but I really do try to be this type of person, and I really try to come off in this particular way, and I really don't want people to see me as da 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 da, right? I wish I had a better concrete example for y'all, but I can't come up with one off the top of my head. But the idea is I'm challenging some aspect of your perception of yourself and who you think you are by kind of showing you ways that you're being that you might not be aware of. And that can feel very vulnerable in the sense that, like, oh shit, somebody is perceiving me for real. Like, it feels very naked if it's being done correctly. I do have an example. I think I've told this before. But in the first year of seeing my therapist, I started seeing her in May. And then by, I want to say it was April or September of that same year, she says to me, like, I'm telling her about my week and how I did my homework, my therapist homework of like, yeah, I was really like acknowledging the way that I was really like observing the way that I was showing up in this relationship and doing this thing. And I realized that I was being like this. And so instead I decided to do this, da, 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 da. And my therapist was like, okay, so I have a question. Um, when you come to these sessions, it seems like you want me to tell you that like you're doing a good job, like that you're good at therapy. Is that something that feels true for you? And I was like, what? What do you mean that I want you to think that I'm good at therapy? Why would you say that? And she was just like, it just seems like, you want me to tell you that you're doing a good job, or that you're working so hard, or that I don't know, it's sometimes it just kind of seems like you want to impress me. And I'm just curious if that's like, if that's something that you're aware that you're doing, or if that's something that you feel like you're doing, or I don't know, what's it like for you? And I was like, well, I guess, yeah, you're right. You're right. I definitely am doing that. I don't like that you clocked it, but I am definitely doing that. Um, And it eventually, and I still think about that to this day because it really fucking clocked me. And like this was in 2021. So tell me why it's only been in the last this Jupiter and Taurus transit that I finally been able to set that part of me down a little bit more. Because for me, I almost choked on my gum. For me, one of my biggest wounds is like not knowing, right? Or rather not getting it right. I have like golden boy syndrome where I want to be seen as somebody who's doing a good job, who's trying to do the right thing. I want to be seen as a good person who never does anything wrong. And so when I was telling her stories, and what I did in therapy for years, not just with this therapist, but like all of my therapists in the past, is I was always telling them stories in a way that made me seem very like self-aware, because I wanted to be seen as someone who was self-aware. And they would always give me that feedback and that validation of like, wow, you seem like really self-aware. You seem like you know what you're doing, whatever. But none of them, it gave me this like false confidence that I can basically psychoanalyze myself, and then I'm psychoanalyzing myself, and then I'm coming to my therapist to tell my therapist about how I've been psychoanalyzing myself and basically asking them if I'm correct. And because I mostly had like white therapists in the past, who, for whatever reason never clocked it, they just were kind of like, it kind of seems like you don't need me. I don't know if that was like a tactic on their part to try and get me to realize like that I was doing it, or I don't know. I don't know what their tactic was because they never told me. But the end result would always be that they basically felt like I didn't need to be in therapy. Meanwhile, I'm having fucking struggles all the time that I'm not even aware of with myself because I kind of have them like repressed in this particular way where it's hard for me to admit the ways that I'm struggling because I'm so used to just like dealing with it myself. And so no therapist was ever able to really see that until I get to this therapist who's like, yeah, it just kind of seems like you're putting up this front where you want me to think that you have it all together and you have it all figured out. And I was like, okay, fine. I'm doing that. How do I stop? Because I don't know how to stop. And she's like, well, I don't know. I mean, what would it be like to just like not have it all together, or to not frame myself in these conversations like, I'm the person who's being harmed, or I'm the person who is doing everything right and this other person is being unreasonable, or whatever it is. And anyway, I say all of this to say, now you said this example was about you, how I get in it. And I was like, shit. And we just had this conversation again like a couple weeks ago where she was like, I know that we talked about this before. Do you feel like you're making any progress on it? And I was like, I'll be honest, I don't know how to turn it off. I was like, I feel like I'm only just now really becoming aware of all of the ways and all the aspects of life that I'm doing this, and I can't not do it. I was like, even when I think I'm being vulnerable, I'm still not. And I was like, I don't even know if I know what it means to be vulnerable anymore. And um what I realized is that, of course, vulnerability looks different for everybody. But for me specifically, being vulnerable is not knowing or doing something that maybe was the wrong thing, or just getting it wrong in general, whatever that means and whatever the context is. And like allowing that to be seen in a way that I'm not posturing over it. Cause it's very fucking difficult for me. And I know the other Leos in here understand it's very fucking difficult for me to not posture over things as if like I don't feel any shame about it until we get to this Jupiter and Taurus transit where all of a sudden I'm like, eek, eek. So anyway, transference, counter transference. I think, and we still haven't worked this out, but I think, on some level, my therapist is a stand-in for, I guess, my parents in a sense, where I'm thinking about this in real time, so this may not even actually be the truth, but one of my guesses for myself is that like one of my guesses for myself is that I have to like frame myself and the decisions that I make and the actions that I take as like reasonable or valid or whatever, because oh, okay, maybe I don't know. I'll have to talk about it more and then get back to y'all. But if I were to just base it on my chart, right? There is with Gemini moon rising, right? There's something between like me and my parents, my family, where I feel like if I don't like qualify or yeah, if I don't qualify my experience or my narrative or whatever it is with like more facts and more context and like some larger theoretical principle or something like that, then they're not going to believe me, you know? So a lot of times something else that I didn't realize I was doing, I think I've talked about before, was um talking about my experience and like qualifying it with psychological theories and principles or astrological um theories and principles or just like some kind of like authority, system of authority or whatever that would say like, yeah, this is a real thing that's happening to you. And so it's something around not being believed. It's something around like wanting to be seen as someone who is telling the truth, who is doing their best, but who is also like um I don't know, something like that, right? And my therapist then becomes the caregiver in that sense, whether I realize it or not. And deep down, what's happening for a lot of clients in this transference thing is that you want the therapist to respond to you in a way that you always wanted like your parents or caregivers to respond to you. And so there's part of you that is again holding this posture or this role or whatever, projecting out this thing to the therapist because you want them to give you the response that your parents give you. But then what actually happens is your therapist is catching on to that and is trying to um basically help you see the ways that you are seeking their approval or seeking this particular response. And when you don't get it, then what happens? Like, how do you compensate, or how do you adjust your behaviors or your storytelling, or how do you posture? How do you defend yourself? Like, just what coping strategies then come up as a result of not getting this particular response? And once you get to a place where you start to break out of those habits, then you're really making like progress and growth and healing in therapy. And once the transference ends, according to Freud, then that's basically like when you're kind of free from therapy. I think I could be misinterpreting that, but right. So there's a lot more happening. All of this to say, there's a lot more happening beneath the surface versus just like you coming to a therapist for solutions and guidance and like, I don't know, having a live journal discussion with a professional. You know, it's not just about asking them for some kind of advice and please fix me. It's like you're literally healing a relationship with different aspects of yourself over time, over like the course of your life. And different parts of yourself are going to come forward in different types of dynamics with the therapist. So, yeah. So, anyway, all of that to say, transference is a really important part of therapy. And then there's also another aspect of therapy where you, as the client, know that you're working with a therapist consciously. And so, you know, this is a person that you're paying to basically do this work with you. And that's another thing that I really struggled with a therapist. And even my current therapist, who, like, there's a boundary thing there where you know that this person is not really your friend in the way that a friend would be your friend because they are someone you've hired to do this work with. And you also have this relationship with them that's deeply personal. And so there's also a thing happening internally where you're wrestling with the fact that this is a person that you've hired and that you're paying, and it's a professional relationship, along with the intimacy of that relationship that results from all of the vulnerable things that you share. And so I know for me, like dealing with all this rejection stuff over the last year, I did have a I did have a moment with my therapist where I said something like, and I'm judging myself for this, but I said something like, yeah, but like, you know, this is this is a relationship where, I'm like paying you to do this for me. So part of me kind of doesn't really trust if you actually like me, or if, we actually are cool. Like, would we be friends outside of this, or am I just like your client? Because you don't like all of your clients, but some of them you do actually like and have a connection with. And so there's always a part of me that's also kind of doubting the authenticity of the relationship, because it is a professional relationship. And my therapist was like, "Oh, that kind of makes me sad for you to say that, because I consider you somebody that I actually and, would potentially hang out with outside of this if we, just knew each other as friends or whatever." And I was like, "Oh, so I'm the asshole." Don't love that. And I had to circle back around and be like, I apologize for saying that. I think I kind of had a defense thing coming up there, where it was like, I struggled to believe that, you're not sick of me, because I have a narrative about myself that at some point people are going to learn things about me and then they're going to be sick of me. Right. So anyway, um, so these are all things that a therapist is working with. So I've talked a lot. I just want to get into the actual conversation. When you're talking to a chatbot, right? A chatbot that has been programmed to respond in certain ways, especially if you ask it to respond to you in a certain way, but also a chatbot that is aggregating data from millions of sources online of other people's conversations and inputs and things like that, and biases and everything else. The chatbot is not doing transference or counter transference. Like, that's not really happening with the chatbot. It's more of a linear kind of like, I don't in a way it's a programmed response. It's based on, yes, pattern recognition and algorithms and all of these things that do kind of tap into your subconscious. But I think what the chatbot is mostly trained to do is first to like validate and empathize with you, and then from there the response that it has is basically going to be based on what you're asking it to tell you. Like, you can ask it to challenge you, you can ask it to be on your side, you can ask it to argue on behalf of the other person in the dynamic, you can ask it to do all of these things, but at the end of the day you are still directing this conversation. Like, the bot, yes, is mirroring back the things that you're asking, but you're mostly in control of a lot of like what types of response you're going to get. And there's not really a way that the bot, at least that I know of, can really check you and say like, "Hey, do you realize that like you're doing this? Do you realize that you are asking me to give you a series of responses in this particular way so that you can get this particular result?" Now, if the bot is doing that, I don't know. But the other aspect of this is how we as people also have a tendency to project sentience onto non-living things. Like, the way that a lot of us are kind of nervous to be mean to chatbots, because what if they rise up one day and they become so intelligent and then we're in like the Terminator, you know? Or the ways that we project not even just sentience, but like we project human qualities onto other things. We do this all the time. We anthropomorphize things. I think that's what it's called. Anthropomorphize things. And so, like, I think it gets very tricky to rely on bots in this particular way, because it is, in my opinion, it is divorcing you from reality in a way that is not overtly obvious. And that's where this whole like these eclipses, because it's almost like our relationship, I don't know, like we talked about how this transit, this Saturn and Pisces transit kind of reshapes our relationship with kind of the meaning of life in a way, or the meanings of reality, or our relationship with reality in a particular way, that you can you can manipulate reality in a particular way when you're only viewing reality through your perspective and your narratives and ideas and beliefs about the world. Does that make sense? It's like, a therapist or just another person in general being different from you and holding up a mirror to you, and then the insights that come from that, and all of the very human nonverbal things that just happen between two people is very different than you talking to a robot. Because in a way, the robot is really going to be a reflection of your own consciousness, just like we say with social media and the timeline and stuff like that. The algorithms, which is also a form of artificial intelligence, are trained to mirror your thoughts and your likes and your dislikes back to you, and so they're going to show you things that you want to see, whether you realize you want to see it or not, and it's going to learn you in this way that it's tailoring itself to you. And I actually think that was something really underrated about having the nodes in Pisces and Virgo, but being the North Node in Pisces being ruled by Jupiter and Taurus, because then Jupiter and Taurus, those are your likes and your dislikes and your standards and belief systems and values. And all of those things the algorithm is picking up on and mirroring back to you in your feed to say like, hey, this looks like something you like. So you end up kind of being siloed off into your own echo chamber of your own thoughts. And I feel like it really does make you lose touch with reality and the fact that people are different from you, and that the fact that like people can be living a completely different life in reality than you are, having completely different experiences that are informing their perspectives about the world, and those are in complete like opposition to the things that you believe are true and real and should be like facts of the universe. And this is where for me like Leo and Aquarius stuff gets really heady, because like when you really like, I do this a lot. um I do this a lot where I have this existential crisis around the fact that the like when you think about how the brain is this organ that is just like constantly firing off neurons and all this like electrochemical stuff that's going on in your brain to conjure up a version of reality really specific to you. it if I think about that long enough, it really makes me feel like consciousness in and of itself, like it's this universal thing that we're all tapped into, but our experience of it is like not it's not concrete, it's not real. Like a lot of it is a projection of your own mind, right? Like you can think about that long enough and start to feel like we're either in a simulation or that like other people aren't real. Especially if you do a lot of drugs and then you're like really seeing things that you wouldn't normally see, it makes you question how much is real. So if you can do that on this like macro level, then on a micro level, you notice how much we're kind of projecting thoughts and stories onto other people that may not even be true for them. Like when you're beefing with somebody and you haven't had a conversation with each other yet about like what's actually going on, you can sit and come up with a whole entire story and narrative about what that other person is thinking and feeling about the conflict and about you that may not even fucking be true. It could be close to the truth because of patterns that you're observing and behaviors that you're observing in them, but that may not be what's actually true for them. They could be thinking something totally completely different than the narrative that you've projected onto them. And whole time like that projection that you have is ruling your whole entire experience with them. Like how often has it happened for you where you where you someone does something to you, either up close or from far away, or someone is behaving in a way that you can't really make sense of, and so when you start thinking about it, you think like, let me think of an example. um let's use like Republicans as an example. I don't know, because this is something that's very ideologically based, right? You might have in your mind, I might have in my mind, I'll say, this idea about Republicans that no matter what, at the end of the day, um, they vote the way that they do because they're selfish. They don't care about other people. They're hyper individualistic. They they are racist, they are sexist, they have these really ancient traditional values and all of this other stuff, right? Like I can have all of these thoughts about what a Republican is and why they behave the way that they behave. And then I'll sit down and have a conversation with someone who votes Republican and find out that they don't even really believe a lot of the things that we're told Republicans believe. In fact, they just vote that way because of one issue, and it's guns. They really like to hunt, or they really like to collect guns, or whatever fucking thing that I don't really care about. And so because of that one issue, they vote Republican. But in everything else, they're like socially liberal, right? Or socially left leaning. They're accepting of gay people. They're accepting of black people. They're accepting of this and that. But because of this one thing, and for whatever reason, like they just are living in their own reality, in their own world, in their own experiences. And so they're not thinking about ways that, Republicans politically are, doing XYZ thing to marginalize groups of people, right? They're not thinking about like politics really. They just have this one issue, and the nuances of the rest of their politics don't actually fit with that idea. And so I have in my mind that all Republicans are like this, when in reality they have their own thing going on that doesn't fit this specific thing that I'm projecting onto them, right? Or um let's say I'm trying to think of an idea that's not I'm trying to think of an example that's not super personal and revealing for me that I can share. I mean, let's go back to the whole rejection thing. Like, if I'm if I automatically have this belief that people don't like me deep down, even though on the surface it seems like they act like they like me, then every time that somebody does something nice for me, I'm going to be suspicious of it. Because in my mind, I'm projecting onto every other person that deep down they don't like me, or that they're annoyed with me, or whatever. And so if I am entering a situation where someone has invited me to go do a thing, and or even better. So if I'm walking around with a mask on and I'm in public, and um somebody is staring at me, right? And I notice that they're staring at me, then I can start creating a story that says, okay, this person is staring at me because I have a mask on and they think I'm a fucking freak. And then we get into an altercation, and then I say, like, look, I know I have this mask on, people don't mask anymore, and I get that it makes me look like a fucking freak, but I'm just a regular dude, I'm just don't want to get sick, I'm yada yada yada, all these reasons. And then the other person would say, oh, I'm so sorry, I wasn't staring at you because you were wearing a mask, I was staring at you because I thought your hair was beautiful, and I was debating on if I was going to come ask you what kind of products you use in your hair. And then I'm like, oh, my bad. I definitely thought you were judging me for wearing a mask. And they're like, no, 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 no. I didn't even notice. I wasn't even thinking about that. I just really liked your hair, or I really liked your outfit, you know? So I'm over here living in this world where everybody is an enemy because because there is some truth that some people do think, obviously, if we're privy to other people's thoughts on the internet all the time, that some people do think I'm a freak for still wearing a mask. But at the end of the day, when I'm engaging with people in real life, a lot of times maybe they have that thought, maybe they don't, but it's not fair for me to insert that thought into everybody else's head if they're not really that concerned with it. Like, I can't know if they're really concerned with it or not until they tell me. And yes, I can make some assumptions about their behavior and how they act towards me, but at the end of the day, you never really know what somebody else is thinking until they tell you. And even if they tell you, there is a possibility that they're lying. So that piece right there, kind of going back to the whole AI bot thing or whatever, and just in general, like this whole conversation of Jupiter and Gemini with Saturn and Pisces, is like anybody can say anything to you at the end of the day. And what you are going to take away from that conversation has a lot more to do with your perspectives and projections and beliefs about the world than it does anything that they actually say to you, right? Hey, April, welcome in. And so the trick around discernment is way more about, I think, especially with the nodes in Leo and Aquarius, the trick around discernment is being way more aware of your own projection. Like, it's self-awareness. Like, there's a self-awareness element to trust that really has to come into play when you're deciding on whether you should believe something or not. Because on the one hand, like, if you are somebody who tends to fall for it a lot, someone who's gullible or someone who misses things or misinterprets things a lot, like, a lot of the distrust that you have against other people, or a lot of the suspicions or defensiveness that you have around stuff, is really more about you not trusting yourself to not fall for it again, or whatever it is, giving the wrong people the benefit of the doubt. Um, and then there's another element at play that to me seems very Pisces, and it might be very Virgo too. But to me, there's a specific thing that I notice with people with Pisces placements, any Pisces placement, where um, you will tell yourself, what am I trying to say? Um, the story sometimes that you tell yourself about another person's behavior specifically, that story serves more so to validate a narrative that you have about yourself more than it does to see the truth or the reality of a situation. Because if you were to acknowledge the reality of a situation, then it's going to tell you something about yourself that is maybe uncomfortable to be aware of. And maybe that's more specific to Saturn and Pisces, but like, it's like a form of denial. And I'm struggling to articulate this because I haven't found a way to put it into words, but it is kind of like a form of denial where, like, if I were to believe that, like, if you're in a situation, going back to the rejection theme, because this just seems the easiest to work with. If you're in a situation where, if you are in a situation where your coworkers actually don't like you, right? And the way that they treat you is really shitty and makes you feel bad about yourself. And, you're just um, constantly finding yourself like justifying their behavior as, oh, well, maybe they're just having a bad day. They have a lot going on in their life. Maybe they're just having a bad day, and um, they have a lot going on. And so they're taking it out on me, but it's not actually about me. Maybe that's true. Or alternatively, what if they really don't like you? Like, what if the truth really is that they don't like you? Then what does that mean for you and your relationship with that person, or working at this place? Like, then what does it mean for you if you were to actually believe that they just don't like you, right? Or on the flip side, um, like I was just saying, maybe you do believe that they don't like you, and that's not actually the truth. Maybe the truth really is that they actually have other stuff going on that they're dealing with within themselves, and you're feeling the effects of that, but it's not actually about you. It could go both ways. Um, but in either case, until you actually have a conversation with that person and you get to factor in their actual narrative and response to that conversation, like, that information is going to determine for you whether you actually believe what they're saying and if you can trust that or not. And sometimes sometimes the fact that you feel like you can't trust someone and what they say is enough information beyond what they actually say to you, you know? Like, especially if you're in like a committed relationship with somebody, or like you have a friend that you've been friends with for a long time and it just seems like their actions never match up with what the story that they're telling you. Like, sometimes it doesn't matter what the reason actually is. Sometimes it doesn't matter what story they tell you or anything like that. Sometimes the truth of the matter is you're uncomfortable in this relationship and not getting any clarity on why this person is behaving the way that they are towards you, and not taking seriously enough the way that you then show up in the relationship because of that. Like, sometimes the lack of clarity is the truth of the situation, and you have to decide if you're okay with a constant feeling of a lack of clarity, or if you want to be in relationships that are more clear and more direct. Like, that's a choice that you can make regardless of the story the other person tells you, because that's then centering your emotional experience in the relationship instead of always having to be empathetic and understanding and compassionate of the other person. But again, if you are the type of person, and I'm one of these people, who has a narrative about yourself that you are only good and you are only worthy of care and love and attention, and that you are only valid if you are always considerate and compassionate and empathetic towards other people, to the extent that you struggle to be compassionate and empathetic towards yourself, then that narrative is getting in the way of you actually like being authentic and taking up emotional space in relationships, because now the other person is always being centered and you kind of fall to the wayside and become their caretaker in a way, or you become there's an enmeshment or a codependence that happens where your worth is based on your ability to like hold everything for that other person and kind of like um manage their experience at the expense of your own, right? So that could be another thing I think that comes up with all of this, is like we could get too caught up in the story being fed to us to the extent that we ignore our own experience. And it's not that you have to choose one or the other, but you have to decide like just how much influence your version and their version are going to have in this dynamic. Because if it's too much from your perspective, if it's too much of their experience, their perspective, the thing that's going on with them, and not enough of what's happening for you, then that's an imbalanced relationship. And your desire for their approval and their care and their whatever it is overriding like you actually getting what you need in that relationship. You know what I mean? So, I said this was going to be about AI, but I guess this is just generally speaking. But the AI piece of it is that, like, yeah, if you are in this echo chamber with this bot that is basically just going to do whatever you tell it to do, you are going to kind of lose touch with what it's like to actually engage those things with other living people who don't just serve to, who don't just exist to serve you in your own inner workings of your own mind, you know? The whole point of the Gemini thing of engaging with other people's perspectives or allowing other people's perspectives is so that you have a perspective besides your own to inform the decisions that you're making and your outlook on things, you know? That's the whole purpose of air in general, is to say like, look, um I get that you see things this way, and you have had experiences that make you see things and understand things in this particular way. And I have had experiences that you haven't had that make me think about things the way that I think about things that's different from you. And by the fact that both of us have these thoughts and these experiences or whatever, these perspectives, um, both of these things exist. They do, in fact, exist at the same time. You don't have to agree with it. You don't have to live your life that way, but these two things do exist at the same time. So how are we, with our very different belief systems and our very different foundations, how are we going to move forward knowing this truth about ourselves, about each other? You know, is there room for us to allow that to be the other person's truth and your truth still exist? Or is it the case that only one person's version of the truth is allowed to exist at once? You know, if we're going to talk about Jupiter being the planet that expands, then I would imagine that Jupiter and Gemini is expanding your perspective because you have access to other people's voices, you know? Um I think Sagittarius, just as an archetype, can get very dogmatic and can get very like, all that exists is what I believe. You know, the only truth is the truth that I believe. And it can be very like, yes, it can be very committed and convicted and unwavering in their faith in that belief. And I do think there are situations where that's necessary, especially in this conversation, right? Like if you were to just rely on how you feel or what you think all the time and never have like personal value system to you that you live by, then you're going to find yourself in a lot of situations where you're doing things that you don't even really believe in or agree with, and that's a reflection of you. Like that is a statement about you, you know. Somebody else is going to see you in that situation, and while you think you're just kind of in it being impartial and just kind of like dabbling, somebody else is going to see that and think that that's really who you are, and you're like, oh, I was just visiting. This is not actually me, you know? It's like I was thrift shopping yesterday and I came across a shirt, just like a t-shirt that was like some brand that was like Southern something. And I was like, I liked it, but then I was like, wait, let me do my Googles real quick, because as a black person in the South, I won't be caught wearing anything that's racist or has racist backgrounds. And so I looked it up and it was like, oh yeah, like it's not confirmed, but it is there have been speculations that this company, you know, Southern whatever out of Louisiana has donated to, you know, XYZ politicians in the past or political causes in the past and blah blah blah. So then I'll be out here wearing this shirt that I just thought it was cute, you know. Come to find out, other people are seeing me wear this shirt and they're making these judgments about like they got low racial self-esteem because why are you wearing a shirt by plantation owners or some shit like that, you know? So it's stuff like that where I think the Mercury ruled signs, you know, you see something, you're taking it at face value and not investigating like the deeper meanings or the larger context behind something, and think that you're just like doing a thing willy-nilly, blah blah blah, not that big deal. And then somebody else catches you doing it and then they're making all these judgments about you. And it's like, oh, I didn't actually like I don't actually believe that. Wait, hold on. This is something I've done a lot in the past because I just didn't know anything about anything. Um, so that's another aspect of it too, is like sometimes you need somebody else to perceive you and like tell you what you look like. And you may not agree with it, but would you rather know how you're coming off to other people and what they're perceiving in you so that you can actually like move and behave in a way that's more in accordance with your standards for yourself? Or do you just kind of want to be out here looking like you do anything, you go with anything, you believe anything, you do whatever, birds of a feather flock together, you know? um yeah. Huh. Interesting. Okay, let me catch up on the chat. I just went on a long diatribe. Oh, we saw that one. So interesting that ChatGPT came out in 2022 when Jupiter was in Pisces. Exactly. And I do think this whole AI thing, like a lot of astrologers have made predictions around it, but a lot of tropical astrologers that I just wasn't paying attention to at the time because they thought Saturn was in Pisces over the last few years. So clearly there was some validity to what they were saying in that case as well. And I think just from the sidereal perspective, seeing it in combination with a bunch of different other placements than kind of what they were seeing. The way this is happening to me right now with one of my teens at my job, yeah, you be in it sometimes, friend. Me after listening to all the nice things in my peer reviews, right? It's like we talk about not internalizing other people's gaze, but sometimes there are good things that we struggle to internalize from other people's gaze, especially things around like people finding you attractive if you don't find yourself attractive, or people finding you intelligent if you don't find yourself intelligent. It's like sometimes other people can compliment you, and the things that they compliment you in directly are like a direct violation against your own narratives about yourself, that you realize like, oh, I didn't realize that I had like low self-esteem in this particular way. Now I can't even accept this compliment. Like, or you just don't believe that they actually mean what they're saying, and now you have this other suspicion about them, that they just like want something from you, or that they're trying to manipulate you in a particular way, when maybe they just wanted to give you a compliment. you know so there's just so many ways. I think the moral of the story with these eclipses, especially in Leo and Aquarius, is that like it's really important during this time to get familiar with the way that you see yourself and the way that you see the world, and just how much you're willing to let other people influence or inspire your perceptions, and how that changes your relationship to trust and the truth and what you believe to be the truth. That was nice. That was nice and succinct. I'm gonna forget that later, but at least we have it on this recording. No, you spitting right now. Yeah, my therapist be clocking me a lot, and I love it. It's like so good. Not the fade to black. He said this example was about you. How I get in it? You've had the same exact experience. The not knowing, yes, the not knowing. Getting flashbacks of being in college for some reason. Interesting. Me as a Gemini rising, making I'm not sure what the typo is. Making analysis at work as to why I'm tired and cannot take on another project. Sadly relatable as a Gemini moon, the dismissal and the gaslighting. Yes. Trying to project what we believe their values are to some extent. Yes, exactly. That's a much better way to say that. Thank you. I wish I would have seen that earlier. But it's true. This is so true. When I was in coaching school, one of the ways that our founder talked about resentment was that like resentment, in a way, resentment is getting upset when somebody else isn't living up to your values and your standards, and you're projecting like your own resentment towards yourself onto the other person for not behaving in a way that you believe is a way people should behave, when in reality that resentment is kind of because you've abandoned your own values in a way, or like not even that you've abandoned your own values, but like you, in a way, you're not truly accepting the other person as they are today in this moment. When somebody else is behaving in a way that you resent, it's likely because you haven't advocated for yourself um in your relationship to that behavior, or you are trying to change the other person in some kind of a way to be different than what they are, instead of accepting that this is how they are and then making decisions you need to make in response to that. Or it's a way of like recognizing that you haven't been living up to your boundaries either, right? Like if I have a resentment towards someone, it's because I'm letting this behavior go on, this behavior that I'm not okay with continue to go on. And so instead of addressing that, I'm sitting here just like letting all of this resentment pile up in me, because I'm creating a story that I'm like trying to project what I believe this other person's values to be, because they're not living in a way that I would live. right? Or they're not responding me into a way that I would respond to them, or whatever. It's like you're centering yourself in a particular way in this dynamic that is not taking into account, again, the truth and the reality of the other person. And I think when it comes to accepting other people as they are, accepting doesn't mean that you have to stay in that relationship and tolerate it. Accepting means, unless this other person decides to change for reasons that they think are important to them, then I can't change them. I have to accept that this is who they are. And I then have to decide if I want to stay here or if I want to go. Because you can absolutely decide that you will stay in a situation and kind of get over the things about this other person that you don't like. Like, you can absolutely do that. And sometimes that's okay. Like, if it's not, like in the example I gave earlier about having a partner who doesn't keep the house as clean as you do, like, you might just decide, okay, I've accepted that this other person is just not going to keep the house as clean as I do. So I'm going to keep cleaning the house because I like a clean house, and I'm not going to resent this other person for not doing it. And then if the other person decides, like, I realize that it's really important to my partner that the house stays clean. So I'm going to make more of an effort because I care about my partner to clean up the house more, but I'm also not always going to get it right. Like, you can absolutely do that, and that's fine. What's not okay is being with a partner who um has decided that you as a person are, I'm trying to think of something shame based. Like, I don't know, it was a silly example, but very real example for me is, like, I used to date straight women a lot as a lesbian. I was not accepting that this woman was actually straight, even though she's behaving to me in ways that are not straight. Like, it's delulu of me to think that me and this woman are gonna have a happy, loving relationship with each other when she's not gay. She's not gonna come out to anybody and actually say that she's gay. And she's also not really accepting, like, or I'm not really accepting the fact that she would rather be with cishet men, and I'm going to delude myself into thinking that I'm different and this and that because it serves me to believe that I'm different and special. And so this girl is going to do a thing that she wouldn't normally do for me because I'm different and special. Like, no, girl. Like, the truth is, regardless of what this other girl wants from me or is getting out of the situation, I have to care about myself enough to know that I want to be in a reciprocal, loving out relationship. And if the other person is not willing to do that, that's not a relationship I need to be in. I don't need to force her to come out. I don't need to force her to, like, see herself and whatever. Like, I don't need to do none of that. I need to go find somebody who is also gay and be with her. Some stuff like that. So, the resentment of, like, being hidden, being this, like, hidden in the closet, and this, like, she doesn't love me out loud and all this stuff. And I used to be that way. I throw a fit about the fact that she doesn't love me out loud. And then I tell myself a story about how she can't accept her own queerness and how, she cares about her family's approval too much, or like other people's opinions too much, or internalized homophobia and this and that. Like, I could tell all of these stories about how she just wants attention from me. And so she's going to keep doing these things that keep me in this relationship, so that she can keep getting attention from me and I keep not getting the things I need in the relationship. Like, you ain't even got to do none of that. I ain't even got to do none of that. I can just say, oh, she doesn't want to be out and in a queer relationship. Well, I want to be in an out and queer relationship. So I'm going to go find somebody who wants to do that. And I'm not going to tell myself a whole bunch of different stories about this other person that may or may not be true. Like, I don't need to do all that. I just accept the fact that she wants this and I want this, and then move on. Right. So a word on resentment for whoever needed that. Taking note of this as I start IFS therapy again. I love internal family systems. I'm such a fan. I think it's very dynamic and very nuanced to understand all of the different voices of other people and all the different value systems and things that have either been imposed on you or that you've internalized throughout your life that you may or may not be aware of. It's fantastic. I struggle in my personal friendships because I want them to show up with the same tools as a therapist. Yeah, I also struggle with this sometimes. Getting better about it. Um, something I'm working on. This is not advice, but something I'm working on with this particular thing is like that I really don't want my friends to be a therapist. Like that's not what I'm asking for from them. I just want somebody to listen and empathize with me because I don't feel like I get enough empathy in particular ways sometimes. I'm always like drawn to people who want to fix and solve, or immediately make me feel better. Sometimes that's not what I need. So learning how to ask for what you need in terms of a response from people is also meaningful. But you have to know what it is that you actually want from somebody. um Different paths to the same conclusion more often than not. Not y'all are in it. I love when y'all are in it. I know you just got back to the gym, but you don't have to come in here swinging like this. I do. I do. I do. I have to. Ugh. What a drag. Me backing up. Y'all are funny. A little bit too much luggage. It's like dealing with healthcare workers who resent wearing a mask around you. Yeah. Yeah. That's real because it's not worth the stress being a library for all of those narratives. That's such a great way to put it. Being a library for all of those narratives. I mean, and it's also kind of a consent issue. Like, is it a consent issue? Um, it's also like, well, yeah, it's just like you are taking on this responsibility of thinking and feeling for everybody else who didn't ask you to do that. And maybe, and in some cases, maybe they did ask you to do that and you didn't realize that you can decline and say, no, actually, I don't want to do this emotional labor for you. I don't know if y'all have ever had the experience of like being in a relationship with someone who refuses to look at themselves. And so you find yourself constantly like looking at them and trying to reflect them back to them and say, like, hey, do you realize you're being this way? And they're just constantly refusing to see it. And you feel like you got to fix and save them. No, girl. No, you don't. Stand up. Stand up and walk away. Do not waste your time trying to make somebody who doesn't want to see themselves see themselves. Because all they're going to do is say, I'm not like that. I'm not like that. That's not what I'm doing. That wasn't my intention. Free yourself from that responsibility. You have the autonomy to do that. You have the autonomy to decide what you do and don't carry. The responsibilities you take on in that way. Don't let somebody put that responsibility on you, and don't take that responsibility on when nobody asks for it. Somebody better be paying you money to psychoanalyze them, okay? Don't do it for free. Wearing yourself out. If you're going to psychoanalyze anybody, psychoanalyze yourself. Somebody starts behaving in a way that you don't like, ask yourself why you are putting up with it. Or ask yourself why you aren't putting up with it. What is it about? Get curious with Jupiter and Gemini about yourself. It's going to be hard to do because Jupiter and Gemini is ruling that Pisces shit. But like, you can redirect that towards yourself. And it's not always, why am I putting up with this? Or why do I refuse to put up with this? There's also some gray things in the middle that you got to figure out what those are as well. But I definitely encourage that. Like it would behoove all of us to see ourselves as both. I say this with a grain of salt because obviously abuse doesn't count. But sometimes even in abuse, and I don't say this in a victim blaming way, but in the self-reflective way of like the whole reason sometimes why abuse, like it's there's, okay, I'm going to say this. I want to say this with a lot of care and intention because I'm not I'm not trying to do a victim blaming thing. But like the nature of abusive relationships a lot of times is that it mirrors a relationship from earlier in your life sometimes, or it mirrors a dynamic out in the world because we live in a fucking abusive society that it can be hard to recognize um abusive dynamics because it's so normalized in our culture, but it's also so normalized when you are used to like being in situations where other people don't value you or other people mistreat you constantly or whatever. So if you're in that situation and you are starting to notice that like, man, I feel like I'm always the person who's doing something wrong, or I'm always the person, like it's always my fault, or it's always, I don't know, the kind of self-blame that comes up when you're in an abusive dynamic and someone is trying to make you feel that way. Like if you notice you're in a situation with someone where you always have to feel like you're in the wrong or you're feeling bad about yourself, like it's going to feel really scary to question that. But even if you can within your own mind, like say, is it really all my fault all the time? Like, is it really always something I did? Am I really the problem? Or should the other person take a little bit more responsibility for this? And then it's not easy to get out of abusive dynamics, obviously. Otherwise, people would never be in them. But if there's any possible way that you can get help, or you can just have a conversation with somebody outside of the dynamic to get their perspective on what they're observing and like really just take that into consideration, um like that can really do a lot, because I find a lot of times like it really sucks, but people feel like they deserve it. I know for me, in times that I've been in those dynamics, is because I felt like I deserved it, you know and it's just not true. Nobody deserves that shit. Nobody deserves that shit. So it is important to like, and maybe that's part of the whole Leo Aquarius of it all too, is to like see your value and your worth and what you have to offer to the world and to other people, and not in this, like, again, not in this subservient way, like that you only exist to serve, or that this other person really needs you because of XYZ things, but it's just like seeing that like I have so much to offer and therefore I have so much to receive, like it's both. It has to be both. um so yeah, if you are in a situation where you're questioning if it's toxic, like I think if you're questioning if it's toxic, you know that's worth being curious about. um but yeah, not to just focus on that, but I think it's also in just like regular everyday relationships that do sometimes just get out of hand, right? Because that's also very common. It's not always like the worst case scenario. Sometimes it's really subtle toxic dynamics that just feel familiar to you because there's some wounded part of you that it feels familiar, and it feels like something you grew up with, and so sometimes it's hard to notice that it doesn't have to be that way, and it can be very hard to walk away from. That's what an actual trauma bond is. Trauma bonding is not when you and another friend just like dump your feelings on each other over a shared like trauma. Trauma bonding is when you have a specific trauma that the other person is more or less exploiting, or that you are reliving because it mirrors a previous like abusive situation. That's a trauma bond. um it's easy to fall into those types of dynamics, and it's also easy to fall into those types of dynamics with people who aren't actually trying to be abusive. Like I wouldn't necessarily label all kind of trauma bonds, and maybe this is not correct, so like I'm not saying that this is the truth, but I don't know that it's always true that toxic dynamics is like one person intentionally being abusive. Sometimes it's just two wounded people um constantly like reliving their traumas with each other because for whatever reason they just like fit that, they not fit, but they I don't know, kind of provoke I don't know, they poke at the wound in a particular way where now you can't. It feels like usually the tell is if you're in a relationship dynamic that doesn't feel good to you, like, it feels kind of miserable on some level, even if you don't fully admit it to yourself. Like, you feel like you're constantly exhausted, you're constantly on edge or on guard, and you can't do anything right. Like, it doesn't always mean the other person is some master manipulator, but it does mean something about that dynamic is hitting on a deep wound for you. And in order to break out of that pattern, like, you have to take those feelings seriously, you know, of like, man, it just, this does not feel good. It feels like I haven't felt good and at peace or at rest even in this relationship in a long time. Um, that could be a sign that you need some kind of intervention, some kind of third party intervention, or that you just need to walk away. Like, you're the only person who knows what you need to do in that situation. Um, if you feel like you really can't talk to the other person about it without it starting up the cycle again, these are all things where it's like, yeah, sometimes you just gotta find a way to center your own experience and ask yourself if you really like what's going on or not. And if you don't like what's going on, what can you do to change it, if anything? And how can you also, like, and is it possible, asking the question, is it possible to also get the other person to buy in to changing these things? Because if the other person is unwilling to change in a situation where you want to change, like, again, you have the option to you be the only person who change. And in most cases, like, again, if the only thing you can control is yourself, is you change, then the other person has to decide, because you've changed, if they are also going to change or if they're going to stay the same. And then again, the ball is in your court to decide if you want to accept that this person has decided to not change. And if you can still live with that, but if you feel like you're not allowed to change and grow, that's important information. So it's definitely not easy. I can say that. I was in a 2-year relationship with someone who didn't want to see themselves and blamed me for it. I swear I lost years off my life. Oh, that's got to be so trying and exhausting. I'm really sorry to hear that. Glad that you made it out, though. Survived and made it out. This is my sentiment on the celebrity stuff that's coming out, because I hate people acting like abuse cannot trap you. So many layers. We have to be extremely careful. Yeah, like, you won't catch me. Like, I think a lot of people, especially with celebrities, um, there's just the way that being a celebrity is so dehumanizing. And, like, people will say, like, with the whole Halle Bailey thing right now and DDG and, like, Ruby Rose and all of that stuff, like, again, saying that, I don't know, the people saying that, like, we can hold two truths at once, that on the one hand, like, yes, Halle is a victim now of this man, but at the same time, she didn't believe Ruby Rose whenever she said, I think it's Ruby Rose, when she said that she was being abused by this man, and it turning into this larger conversation about women not being believed. And, like, I think, I don't know what the correct thing is, but for me, from the therapy perspective, is like, if you are in a relationship with somebody who has a history of abuse, not you, but, like, if you are witnessing someone be in a relationship and defend someone who has a history of abuse, why is your first thought not that they are being manipulated by the person that they're with? Like, I just am not going to put it on the person who's being abused in any context that they should have listened or they should have known better or done whatever. Because how often have you just, like, been friends with somebody that somebody else doesn't like or has an issue with, and you side with your friend because you have a relationship with them more than this person who's trying to, like, tell you what's going on? And it's not to say that, like, women shouldn't be believed or anything like that. It's again a discernment question. Like, it's not even about that, but it's more so this thing of, like, when a person is or has actively been victimized, why are you putting it on them that they should have listened and should have known better. Like they're literally in the dynamic that would make it hard to believe somebody else, because like if you are in a relationship with with someone who is suspected to be an abuser, but they're being really nice to you, you know, and like all of the other covert manipulation tactics and trauma bonding things and all this other stuff that happens, it's not like you're just going to automatically be like, oh, I need to get out of this. Like to some extent, you're already kind of hooked into it. And so if you, again, this goes back to the whole thing I was saying about just Pisces as a sign, as an archetype. If you were to believe that the person that you're dating is an abuser, then like you're going to ask, what does that mean for me that I chose this person, or that I'm in this relationship, or that I love this person? Like you're going to start, it's going to make you have to ask yourself a lot of really uncomfortable questions that then likely just lead to a lot more shame, when it's really like, it's just really fucking complicated, man. Like to then have to confront the fact that like you fell in love with this person who has a history of treating people terribly. Like it's hard not to internalize that then to be a statement about you when you're a victim. Like I don't know. So I just feel like this stuff is hard to talk about, especially publicly, when everybody has their own relationship with having been abused or having been in these different dynamics, and what they think they would have done or what they should have done, or just all this. There's like so much stuff that comes up that I just feel like empathy is really important. And just understanding that actually you don't understand what it was like for them in their specific situation. Like what it was for them is not the same thing as what it was for you. What it was for Hallie is not the same thing that it was for Ruby. Like it's just different. And it's not that I just don't think the question is that the conversation should be that she should or shouldn't have listened. The topic is the point is that DDG is abusive. And that's it. Like it's the abusers are always, I'm not going to say they always have the upper hand, but it's like the abusers, the manipulators, whoever it is, like I don't know. I don't know what I'm trying to say, because I'm trying to really not say the wrong thing or say something that I don't mean, but it's like abusers go out of their way a lot of times to not seem like they're being abusive. So if you believed that they weren't abusive and they're manipulating you into believing that they're not abusive, that's not your fault. You know, like it's their fault. So I just don't think it's fair to, it's that whole perfect victim thing. Like, I just don't think it's fair to blame someone for not believing somebody else in the exact same situation whenever it comes to abuse. It's like, it's just part of the unfortunate dynamic, the unfortunate aspects of the dynamic. Does that make sense? I don't know. That's my thought. Maybe there's something else, but yeah, like it's hard to just accept accept that from someone else when you're already kind of under the spell, if that makes sense. And like, yeah, there's like red flags you can look out for and all of this other stuff, but ultimately, like if it feels familiar to you, they're not going to look like red flags, they're going to look familiar. And if you already have, again, a narrative or a belief about the world and about relationships that this is just something that you have to put up with, then you know that's going to color the way that you take in that information. And it's not about, I don't know, it's just, it's different. It's different for everybody, and it fucking sucks. It's a really hard situation to be in. So I apologize, also trigger warning, because I know this is like hits close to home for some of y'all. I know it hits close to home for me, because it really sucks to reflect on a situation that you were in and not blame yourself. But at the end of the day, like it happened that way because someone was trying to make it that way, you know? Also, the work required to leave an abusive dynamic is long and hard. It can take years for you to fully realize what happened to you. Absolutely. Years and decades sometimes too, especially if you're like too traumatized to like even go back into the event, and to actually like assess what happened. It's really that shit's really hard. So I just feel like people don't have enough compassion for me, Too much there's just too much wanting accountability for like the wrong shit in my opinion. Especially like saying that Hallie should have believed Ruby Rose and Hallie was only like Hallie I don't even think Halle Bailey is like 25 years old yet. The girl was like 21, I think, or she might have even been younger than that when they did Ungodly Hour. Like that girl is not that old. To think that she should have known this and should have listened to this and should have did this and should have, like, leave that shit at the fucking door. This is a child. This is a young adult, And DDG as well is also young and needs some fucking guidance and some actual like I don't know, some actual leadership from someone who's not a fucking red pill right winger alpha male, like we're just in a shitty position socially overall that you can talk about have discernment, have better discernment and all this stuff all day long, but until you're in it, you don't know. You don't know what you would do until you're in it. So don't come for me. Or come for me. I don't really fucking care. For me, it ties back to relationship to the caretakers and dependency there. Yes. Literally, I can't believe the shit coming out of that Diddy case too. The questions that they were asking Cassie. Right. It's just messed up. On a macro level, living in a society that does nothing but interrogate just to do whatever the fuck they want. Right. As Kiki Palmer would say, the reframe, except it's justice and accountability being tailored to violence. Right. Because, like, what is the accountability that you actually want? You know? It's so easy to lose yourself in those dynamics that, like, I just don't feel like it's not to say that, if you are in a dynamic where you're being harmed and then you're harmful to other people, it's not to say that, like, you shouldn't have some kind of accountability to that to eventually come around and say like, I was really wrong for this thing, I shouldn't have behaved that way, I was in a really bad situation, and it's okay to explain the behavior but not to justify it by saying like, yeah, I was, in this fucked up situation and that's why I act like that. But I don't know, there's a level of nuance in there that is like when you are doing things because you are under the thumb of somebody who is also like kind of holding you hostage in a way or manipulating you to behave in certain ways, like some of that is not you, some of that is being being manipulated by somebody else. And so I don't think it's fair um to totally like, I don't know. I just think there's a lot more care that needs to be taken with that. It's making me think about like people who are in cults as well, like um it gets tricky because you're under the spell of this person who has their own agenda, and then you're behaving in a way that kind of goes against maybe what you would normally do, but it's just not. I think the point of it is that it's just not black and white. um so like, yeah, it's meaningful to come around and say like, yeah, I behaved in ways that I didn't agree with once you're out of the situation, but I think people demand that a little soon, before the person even has time to process the experience that they were having themselves, like, damn, I was really somebody else. I really lost myself in this dynamic. Like, and give them a chance to fucking grieve themselves before they have to come all out and be all accountable to the rest of you. That's like what they do with actually, I don't know if that's what they do in AA. And I don't know if I really fuck with AA for real. But I'm just thinking about how like you have to come to terms with your own experience first before you go out like holding yourself accountable, whatever that means. It took a weird turn. Took a weird turn to get to this point. Yeah, I guess my point is that I just don't think it's fair to continue to beat up on people who are likely already beating themselves up. Like, just like chill out. Chill out for a minute. Let them get it together, and I'm sure they will atone for things in a way that is appropriate for them because shit is fucked up. So I would like to end on a lighter note somehow. Cause that's really heavy. That is really heavy. And do I have anything funny? Anything sweet? I don't know. I guess on the bright side. I guess on the bright side, what am I eating today? I don't know. I have my meals. What do I want to cook later? Let me see. My little meal box that comes in. So I have the option between umami ginger pork bowls, which I'm probably going to cook that because ginger goes bad so fast. So I'm going to cook that. I also have a sweet ginger chicken stir fry bowl to make, and then I have sweet and smoky barbecue pork tacos to make. I'd be cooking almost every day, every other day at minimum. I'd be cooking. And it's exhausting. You have to cook. Well, you have to prepare all the fresh vegetables, and then you have to chop all the fresh vegetables, and then you have to cook them, and then you have to prepare the meats, then you have to cook the meats, then you have to clean it all up once you're done. And it just like I get home at 5:00, 5:15 with traffic because I live close to work. And I got to do all of this. And then by the time I finish it all, it's 8:30. I have like an hour before I start falling asleep on the couch like an old man. And then I have to get ready for bed. And then I wake up and it's 6 a.m. already. Like there's just not enough hours in the day. Why do we work 8 hours a week? I mean, 8 hours a week would be great. Why do we work 8 hours a day? 9 hours a day if you don't count lunch. It's too much. But I love me some ginger. Ginger is that girl. Ginger is that girl. You can freeze it. I don't know if that ruins it either. I think if you chop it before you freeze it and then you just use it frozen, throw it in there to thaw out in the pan or whatever, then I think it's fine. That's a good point. I don't even think about that. They gave us carrots because the farm, it was an organic farm. They gave us a bunch of carrots. So I need to start eating some of those as well. I might have some after this as a little snack. Some fiber. Fiber is so good for you, you guys. It's been 2 hours. I have a whole frozen ginger and I've never had a problem. I have whole frozen ginger. I've never had a problem with it. Good to know. Good to know. Spent this entire live meal prepping and then cleaning all the dishes. I love that because that's what I do when I listen to other people's lives or podcasts is I do functional stuff like that. So I'm so glad to know that I'm doing that for you. That feels very full circle to me. If I know that's like stuff y'all are doing stuff in the background instead of being in the chat, that also is fine with me. That makes me very happy. It's like co-working or body doubling, I mean. And I think that's really cool. Oh, I lifted weights today. And I just love lifting weights. You only have to lift like twice a week to see results. You really don't have to do that much. You can do full body days twice a week and you will make progress. I've made so much progress. And in fact, I think it's not only easier, but I think it's what's the word? I don't know, more practical, not even that. Sustainable, I don't know. What I'm trying to get at is when I was working out, 3, 4, 5 times a week, like every time you go to work out, you're still fatigued from the last time. So, and that's usually what people who are like bodybuilding or whatever, that's what they do. And I had bodybuilding goals because I like wanted to put on more mass and all this other stuff. But it's just so hard to do. You really don't need to work out every day. At least if you're doing other forms of just like general movement, you don't need to like lift fucking weights every day unless you're a professional bodybuilder. You can work out, do weights twice a week, and the best part about it is that your body feels fresh like the next time that you do it, so you can lift heavier and move more weight without like injuring yourself or whatever, and still like level up and then lift more weights the next week, you know? So that's been a great surprise to me because I started lifting really heavy when I was really like on my Zoom, but then I stopped and I thought I lost everything and I really didn't. And in fact, I've come back stronger. So I'm not pushing myself the same way that I was. So the amount of weight that I'm moving hasn't necessarily increased that much, but I feel how I could actually lift a lot heavier than I am if I wanted to. And that just feels really nice to know. So if you were wondering, you ain't got to do all that. You ain't even got to do all that, and you'll save money on supplements and everything else too if you buy protein or creatine or whatever, because you don't have to use as much. You can just use a little bit. I only supplement protein um after I work out, and then the rest of the time I'm eating it. I just try to eat more in general because I don't like taking supplements. I don't like taking anything really, but we just overdo a lot of stuff in this society, and a lot of times I think they just want you to consume more. I don't know. I don't know. Because if you take protein every day and creatine every day, then you got to buy more of it more often. And I, as a Capricorn, am simply not going to do that. I don't care if it's going to make me put on a pound more muscle in X amount of time. Just don't do that. Strength train once a week, even if you go hard once a week, even that's plenty. That's what I've been doing lately. And I still feel like I make progress every time. So do once a week, do twice a week. Don't go crazy. You don't have to. Do compound lifts. Compound lifts will go a long way if you're just trying to lift just for the benefits of lifting, stronger bones, um, better blood glucose regulation and insulin regulation and all that kind of stuff that your muscles do. Your muscles do a lot more than just move your bones, if you were wondering. They are also organs that do a lot of different things. And moving them, they literally are designed to move and to move heavy things as well. So they like that. It's healthy for those organs to lift weights. So to get the benefits, you don't have to go all out. You really don't. Once or twice a week, plenty. And try to hit all the muscle groups. And you can hit all the muscle groups by doing compound lifts, and that saves you time. Do a little bench press, a little squat, a little deadlift, maybe a lunge here and there if you feel like it. Some rows for your back, rows or pull downs. Yeah, and that's plenty. And then if you just like want to get bigger biceps or whatever, or if you want to enhance your compound lifts, then you add in some of the isolated lifts like dumbbell curls or tricep pull downs or leg extensions and leg curls. You can add those in too on certain days, whatever. Cycle it, move it all around. Google beginner lifting workouts and just like ease into it. If you try to do too much at once, everything's going to hurt for an unnecessarily long amount of time. You're going to be sore, more sore than you need to be. Now, if you're getting into lifting, you're going to be sore anyway because your muscles are like, whoa, and they have to adjust. In the same way that you get like calluses on your hands from lifting and it, at first it really hurts your hands, but then you build up the calluses so it doesn't hurt anymore. Your muscles are the same way. They at first when you start working them out, they're like, ouchie, wow, this is too much. But then the more you do it, they're like, okay, we're ready for this. We're used to it now. It's fine. Give yourself 3 weeks, 2, 3 weeks. That third week is going to be really difficult because you're going to be tired. You may not be as sore, but you're going to be tired. But you get through that third week and you go through the fourth week. That's it. Then just stick with it after that. Because once you get out of the soreness phase, then you start to see the gains. You start lifting more weights. Oh my God. It's so exciting to feel yourself get stronger. Like, genuinely, it feels like, I don't know, like part of human design. You just start getting stronger and you're like, wow, I didn't know I could do this. And your body is like, yeah. And then it translates into other aspects of your life. Because I lift, I overdo it, so don't be like me. But because I lift so much and because I bike so much when I do bike, and mountain biking is very strenuous. When we were farming the other day, we were out there for 4 hours. We went out there at 8 a.m. We finished at noon, and I told y'all I was doing a lot of the shoveling. And I was fine. I had my watch going. Ended up burning 1,000 calories between trying to stay cool and also doing like the physical labor. Burned 1,000 calories and didn't feel like dying afterwards. I didn't feel like I was gonna pass out. I of course stay hydrated and stuff, but I was like, okay, this is this is work, but it didn't feel like it was that bad. I was very tired afterwards, of course, went to sleep, woke up the next day, and I wasn't sore like I thought I would be. I was almost certain that my lower back was gonna hurt. My hips were a little bit irritated at the end of the day, but thought I was gonna feel a lot worse, but I was fine. And then I today went and did another workout. So it translates to other areas of your life as well. It's just good if you can. If you can't, that's fine too. You definitely don't have to be at the gym lifting dumbbells and shit to, work your muscles out. You can do little things here and there that still make a big difference, especially if it's not something that you really want to turn into a hobby or whatever. You can do whatever you can do is plenty. It's just a matter of doing it, you know, in a frequency that makes sense to you. So, okay. I think that's enough for today. Thank y'all so much for hanging out with me and for listening for 2 hours and 10 minutes. Thank you for your input in the chat and for listening. It was really good to see y'all. I don't know if I have any announcements. I don't have any announcements right now. But I'm gonna go. I hope y'all have a wonderful day. Okay, bye.